Okay, hello, fellow saints. This is Churchanity. This will be part 12 of this series, and actually, I'm planning on wrapping this up on this series here and stuff, since there was really just less than 12, 13, and then there's a small final chapter on, he calls in the book, Human and Divine. And I was kind of finishing some of this last night, and as I was kind of reading through it, I realized that really lesson 12 was kind of really pretty much a continuation of what we talked about in the last one with the lesson 11. So it was really not a lot of, I'd say there wasn't a ton of new content. So it was kind of on the same level in terms of, I think part of one of the key things is just that every individual Christian makes up the church. Okay. And it kind of goes back into that the church is not defined necessarily by just what the elders dictate, or it's not kind of a dictatorship type of model. It's not what it's supposed to be in the New Testament times, and nor today, and stuff. So it's not, not like from a, one person dictates as the leader on what's supposed to happen. It's all collectively and individually working together as a cohesive unit. Okay, so that just kind of summarize, without having to go through chapter 12, to kind of summarize. Now, also chapter 13 was quite different, because I guess there was an issue he was dealing with back in his times, where the church, some churches were, saying that not to give to. That wasn't biblical to have foster homes, and I guess even nursing homes was, I think, part of that, apparently from that chapter. And while I don't know if this is necessarily I don't know that this is really a big topic today, but it's kind of funny, because I would probably go a step further in terms of, because here we have preachers that obviously had church organizations that were, they may have even been, financially incentivized to other congregations not to give to other agencies and stuff. So there may be some of that going on that could have been happening as well. I can see some of that, if they realize people were giving to other agencies, and if their church is struggling, then you could see some financial incentive there to propel that. And also, while we have no proof that there was any foster homes, that type of thing, and other than there was monasteries, things like that, that could help in some capacity. We can't really say if it is pro or against New Testament time church. However, I would say that again, it kind of goes back to once you start making things a corporation, including the church, then it's corruption starts seeping in. Okay, so with that comes, you got to start abiding by. Now you got to abide by laws of the government, increasingly so when you try to do a business, and even more so for nonprofits. They're even more regulated and stuff as well. So so with that comes compliance and stuff, and of course you have to have you start having buildings and all this stuff. Employees with salaries and all that, then the things kind of morph and change to where, to me, there's you got too much liabilities on the book, so to speak, that can cause corruptions from within. So while I'm not going to read too much of the lesson 13, just because I felt like some of that is not as relevant today, although the broader picture is that it shows there was obviously the hypocrisy of it all, where you can give to an organizational church that's not biblical, but not to a foster home that may or may not be biblical, and stuff. And it's not. And let me be clear on this too. The idea of if a believer were to set up a nonprofit, foster home or something like that, I wouldn't say that it's not possible to do it very well, but especially if you're trying to save children that are about to be aborted, that's you could potentially save lives in that, and I think that's very honorable work in that kind of thing. Now, ideally, that kind of situation, I would hope that as best they can, they would already have Christian parents lined up and ready to hand off children as soon as possible, rather than being a quote foster home, and trying to actually run a home. I think it would be very, very difficult, but the idea would be is trying to get people in a loving home as soon as possible. Try to get these children to be cared for, and people that have already been vetted, and families and stuff like that and stuff. But I think there's a way to do it right. And again, if it goes back to, when you start having money and facilities and cost and these kind of things and salaries and all those kind of things step in, a lot of times that's where corruption comes in. And then, adoption services are well known to be very, very expensive and timely, and, to do all the paperwork and vetting and all this kind of stuff. So again, if there was a way to streamline a lot of that and to, keep the cost down and make it very affordable, whether it means receiving the child affordably from people that are maybe going to abort or can't afford to have children, or maybe they're on drugs, things like that. Being able to take these children and real quickly get them in a home that's already been vetted and approved, and making it affordable for both sides. Because again, it shouldn't be about, if we're doing this from the heart and we're doing this as true Christians and believers, it shouldn't be about making money. Okay, let's just be honest. Be real about it. It shouldn't be about making money. Now, sure, you're going to have some bills to meet and all that kind of stuff, and so, but if you're in the black, then you should, and you're doing this from the heart, then you should be doing pretty good. But that's not how the world operates, right? The world operates via profits and stuff. So that's where you start getting into some bad areas, I think. So if I wanted to talk about some things as I went through this, some things that really kind of, some thoughts really came to me. I thought, let's talk about this a little bit in terms of this. So one thing I've realized is that sadly, as the modern church, we have outsourced our giving on a lot of levels. We've outsourced it. And, very, very sad when, we're willing to allow nonprofits to take over the work of the church. We have literally over the years and generations, we've let, like, for example, a Red Cross step in place of the church and to, feed the nation, so to speak, and to help in times of crisis, rather than a lot of times, rather than the church stepping up. A lot of times we raise our hands and just say, so Red Cross has got it, they've got this, or United Way, or whatever the foundation or stuff it is. Then we do that. Now, because of that, also there's been a lot of corruption also within these things, and I don't know if people know the corruption that happened with the Haiti incident years ago when the Clintons were in office, but they got plundered by the Clintons, and so Clintons are wanted for crimes against humanity over there in Haiti. I would love to deliver them up personally, but for what the corruption that they've done to that country, it's very, very despicable, and so that's just an example. Though they actually took a lot of funds. A lot of Americans gave money, and this is where I'm going to talk about this in terms of giving. A lot of Americans did, ignorantly gave money to these organizations like the Red Cross and stuff. And I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but it was millions or billions of dollars. And the Haitian people never saw a dime. Basically, they never saw anything. Like, where's the money? Where did all the money go? And so they literally went down there and plundered them and didn't give any money to the people. To fix the development and stuff like that. They basically just literally plundered on both sides. So they plundered American people financially. They plundered us. In the meantime, they were plundering the nation in Haiti from resources as well. At the same time, after a natural disaster already occurred, so they were already in a weak state as it was. So very corrupt. And this is why, I really feel as believers too, there is an accountability to our giving. And we should not give blindly, okay? While we should give freely, and let me clarify this: we give freely, but not blindly. And to me, there's a big difference here, because when it's one thing to give, but we also don't, we don't just give up our to close our eyes to where the money's potentially going, okay? We need to know who we're giving our money to, okay? Would it be promoted to, give money to a wicked person per se, knowing they're going to go spend it on drugs or alcohol or prostitutes and like that. I mean, if we know deep down, we know that they're probably going to go spend it on that. It's probably not the best investment, right? If they're a wicked person, and you're going to hand them some money, they're probably going to go spend it on something bad. Now, I'm not saying we know the hearts of everybody, but again, if we know that, then we need to be cautious. In thinking through this, I was thinking there was a scripture I was trying to find last night, and I finally found it. I was praying about it, and I finally found it. And it was it's in a different letter that's not known by many because it's not in your common Bible. And I'm going to probably cover some more of this later, but in another post. But it's called the Didache, and then Didache, and it's a lesser known. It's known to be a letter of the 12 apostles to the Gentiles, to the Gentile church, and it kind of goes in. And it's not real lengthy, so again, I may do a reading on this in the podcast as well. But there was a scripture in there that I wanted to talk about because it talks about this. So in the Didache, it's on chapter 1, verse 6. It does say here, however, concerning this, there is a saying: "Let your alms sweat in your hands until you know to whom to give them." And basically saying to be led by prayer in the Spirit. That's what it's basically implying. And that was like an old saying even back then, leading up to the apostles' time, to let your alms sweat in your hands. So alms is giving, you're giving and stuff. So let it sweat in your hand before you give. So that was something I was trying to. It took me a while to find it last night, but and stuff. So. But let me be clear. Let me back up a little bit. I want to go back to verse 5 to clarify this. So he says here, "Give to everyone who asks you, and don't ask for it back. The Abba wants his blessing shared. Happy is the giver who lives according to this rule, for that one is guiltless. But the receiver must beware, for if one receives who has need, he is guiltless. But if one receives not having need, he shall stand trial in the community, answering for why he received and for what reason. If he is found guilty within the community, he shall not escape until he pays back the last penny. However, concerning this, there is a saying: let your alms sweat in your hands until you know to whom to give them." Okay, so that's kind of finishing chapter 1. So again, we do freely. It is encouraged to freely give, but there is a sense of still. You still give kind of cautiously. You don't. You want to know who you're giving money to. Okay, and so an example of this would be, so we say, imagine one person is a non-believer, and let's say they donate money to an abortion clinic. Okay, and we say, oh, that's horrific. Okay, well, yes, of course, from a believer standpoint, that would be terrible. And then we say another supposed Christian is in a popular local church congregation, and they give their tithings consistently. That church gives to the abortion clinic. Okay, so while that person doesn't have the direct sin of donating to that money, obviously the church organization, the leadership and all of that would be the ones that would primarily be the ones that would have to pay the penalty for that. That they would get the ones that would face the judgment for that stuff, that money being distributed in such a corrupt way that doesn't support the Christian walk. And so they would definitely be the ones judged. However, if you're the believer, if you truly are a believer, and you get wind of this and you find out, wait a minute, why do the church gave to the abortion clinic? I would hope that the Spirit in you would seek another church, or would leave the church, or at least would go talk to the pastor about it and find out what was going on, why this happened, and try to talk some sense into him. Something would have to be done. Okay, this something will have to change, okay? And if not, then you move on. The Spirit, the Ruach, will not let you settle on something like that. It will not let you stay in a place of corruption, of a corrupt church like that. It shouldn't let you stay, okay? And I had something. It was a different concept a little bit, but over the years, I remember this was a long time ago, but I had invited one of my brothers to church one time. To a church I was going to, like I said, it was a long time ago, back in the 90s. And I invited him to, I think it was like a night service. I think it must have been like a Wednesday night or Sunday night. But I invited him to a service, and I was very upset because they chose that service, which they were a lot about money and tithing, I will say. But they talked that whole service about money and tithing, and it was very embarrassing for me, and it was very turned off my brother even more. And so I was very frustrated with them. I even wrote them a whole letter and posted it, put it on their doorstep. Wrote them a whole letter, put an envelope, put it on the doorstep, and because I was so frustrated, and I stopped going to that church. I mean, I left. I never got a response from them, and I left the church. And that's how we have to deal with things, spiritually speaking. Once you know there's corruption, you've got to move on, okay? And that's just natural. Because the Spirit's going to pull you out of that corruption and that false teaching, okay? And so, so again, I don't want to discourage giving. I'm not saying that, but be cautious of who we're giving it to and stuff. And then also, I want to talk to you about panhandlers, because I know here in America, one of the problems that's happened, over the years, is there's like a whole industry of what we call panhandlers. Is these are people that they'll stand on the side of the road by popular venues, by the mall, things like that. Especially right at the highway exits and stuff. But they'll sit on the curbs out there collecting free handouts, collecting money and stuff, and they'll hold up signs and all this. And so, but the problem is that's literally become a business. There was even an old story I remember reading like years ago. There was like a big like CEO guy, and I guess he left his job because he was making more money on the side of the road doing that, and way less. He had like no stress other than like the heat, the weather and things. But other than that, he had no stress. Rather than trying to run a whole company and all the stress, and dealing with all that and lawsuits and this and that. So, he was making about the same or more money on the side of the road begging than he was. And on top of that, at the time it was tax free. I mean, since then they've got panhandlers licenses that they're supposed to have and things like that. But even then, they're still getting cash, so they still can report a very small amount of what they're actually receiving, hence a less tax burden. So if they're getting cash, then there's no, they don't have the tax burden that they would have if they're making, $200,000 or $300,000 a year in a job, and stuff. So that's something we have, that's in America. That's really the bad thing is that it does make you pause when you start seeing people on the side of the road. It makes you pause, because now you're like, well, are they trying to just play me? And I remember years ago, I gave a guy, he had a Jesus Saves like RV type of thing that he would pull up in like this McDonald's by this big Walmart center. And years ago, I gave this guy, I gave him at least $20 or something. I don't know, $20 or $40 or something. I gave him, and it was one of those things to where but I realized later on that he came, he was coming there all the time. So he was saying he needed gas money, but then eventually I realized, oh, this guy's coming like, he was there all the time, and I know I gave him enough for at least a half a tank of gas or something to where he could at least keep on moving. And here he was still there day after day for a long period of time, collecting as much money as he could possibly receive, And so that's where, that there's some, corruption and stuff going on, and stuff. So it's sad to see that when that happens, because people are, they will manipulate you if we're not careful, and we don't want to be naive to think that there's not, that people aren't going to do that. So there's a level of being, not being naive, but also, like not falling for the corruption, but also not being afraid to give too. So there is, I really think there's a balance there between the two. Okay, so something to think about. Okay, and then as I mentioned too, we are not to, we should not be outsourcing the work of Christ, that what Christ has given us. Okay, to the idea that we can just outsource this and to say, well, I'm going to give to this organization, they'll take care of it and stuff. I think again that's a major weakness that we have as a modern day church and stuff, because again we're trying to pass on the stuff. But the worst part is, what I was thinking was that we're forsaking the blessing. Okay, we're forsaking the opportunity to share the gospel. We're forsaking the opportunity for edification with other people, and also potential wonderful stories of salvation, and that we can share with other believers, so other like-minded people. And so we're really missing a great opportunity there when we obfuscate our responsibilities that we're given in terms of giving back to the local communities and even other believers and stuff. So keep that in mind. Okay. And then there was in that final chapter, I wanted to read. There was a good little part there. I kind of wanted to read through some of this to kind of recap the book. He talks about all these that departed from the church organization of the first century as it is revealed in the Bible, and that they have interposed a human control between God and man, attributing to the church as they represent its powers and rights that tend to exalt the human and to depreciate the divine. So there he's just talking about how as usual, the world raises up the person. They're exalted and the divine is dethroned, so to speak, and stuff. So we want the opposite. We need to be lifting up the Father and Christ, and bringing ourselves down. As John the Baptist said, he must increase, I must decrease. And so we should have that same mentality. Okay, and then Christ is Lord and ruler, and there is none other. And so the individual Christian is personally responsible for what he does, and therefore holds the right to make his own decisions. This is especially true today, as everyone has access to the Word of God and is responsible for making his decisions in keeping with it. The divine organization of the church, as revealed in the New Testament, is simply this: Christ is Lord and ruler over the church or assembly of God's people. He is Lord and ruler of each individual Christian, and each Christian is subject to him directly and personally. The relationship of Christians to each other in the church is that of children in the same family, or of the members in the human body subject to the one head. No child in the family or member in the body has power or control over any other, but there should be mutual consideration, Ephesians 5:21. The more mature, the more spiritual, should take the lead and should be respected as leaders in the cooperative effort of Christians. 1 Corinthians 16, 15 through 16, 1 Thessalonians 5, 12 through 13. This cooperative effort has been made more effective by the appointment of elders, bishops, or shepherds to lead the flock of which they are a part. This leadership is primarily functional in the local congregation, Titus 1:5, Acts 14:23. But its influence should contribute to the edification and work of the universal church, Ephesians 4:11 through 16. An elder's leadership is coextensive with his Christian influence, and his obligations parallel his opportunities for helpfulness to every child of God, whether he is a member of the congregation where the elders attend or not. The establishing or formal placing of one's membership of the congregation is not requisite to being under the leadership of its elders. This should be the natural result of Christian association. If we consider elders as leaders, not dictators, our forms and technicalities become unnecessary. May God hasten the day when we open our hearts to his divine message and learn to rely fully upon its power and be content with its organization, the effectiveness of which is the natural product of the vital Christian relationships. Okay, and that ends the book right there. And so we definitely have to understand that that Christ is Lord over every individual within the church, and so He is the true head, the true cornerstone of every individual member. Okay, and so so He leads us all, and so we don't want to detract from that in any way. Even though having some organization, having some leadership, is important to have some kind of leaders to kind of go to for questions. To have somebody kind of doing daily administration, whether it's passing out goods and things like that. So you need some kind of leadership, but again, it's not like the world's way of doing it. And that's kind of what you're talking about. Like it's different from the world's mentality where they want to lord it over you, right? And we've talked a lot about that in this series. Okay. So that concludes the book, and then I had some notes here I wanted to kind of cover, though, as kind of a recap on kind of, what is the church, what are the church activities or works that as believers that we should be focused on. And so I had some notes. Let's go through these real quick. So, and these are also important. I didn't necessarily want to go 1, 2, 3 or anything because so I ended up doing 1A, 1B, 1C. So 1A is to save the lost sheep, i.e. share the gospel. Okay, so that's the first work of is to evangelize or to share the gospel. That's to save the lost sheep, right? 1B is edify the sheep. We're also known as building up the saints. Okay, so edifying one another within the group is also a major function of the church. Is what we've learned through this series. 1C is to love thy neighbor, and this is talking about the poor, the widow, the children, infants, the fatherless. All these things are very honorable things. We need to show the love. So if God is really in us and Christ rests in us, and if we truly have the Spirit of God, then we will act like we do, and we will actually fulfill that through actions will come through us naturally. It won't be forced, because we will have the love of God resting in us, and so then we will love thy neighbor, fulfilling the commandment. And so we need to be a righteous example to the world, including the lost sheep, so that they, when they see our works, they will glorify God, and they will come, and they will likely join the assembly once they realize, you're different than the world. You're not of the world. You're different. Okay. So, and this also, let me be clear that this also, love thy neighbor, includes the physical and spiritual needs as well. As we've learned in this series, we talked about how they would supply physical needs. They would provide, whether it's food and I'm sure clothing's probably in there. We didn't have the details necessarily, but we know they provided for places that other believers in need amongst themselves. They would pass things around as needed. So money, food, any kind of resources, clothing, blankets. We would assume that all these things could be included in that process. So physical and spiritual needs both. When I say love thy neighbor, I'm including both of those. Okay. So that's kind of a real quick recap on kind of what the church should be involved in, and of course keeping in mind a part of that is there'll be other there may be other things that come up administratively, or there'll be some minor things here or there, correcting dogmas and stuff that get out of hand, or those are other aspects that come in. But again, those are to me the top 3 kind of things that we kind of learn from this that we should be truly focused on. Notice I didn't talk about building administration. We didn't get into HR. We didn't get into vehicle maintenance for the church. We didn't get any of this stuff, because those are all things of the world. We didn't get into business licensing, building maintenance, because these aren't things that are necessary or vital for the true church, the true assembly of Christ. So keep that in mind. But well, be blessed in Messiah, and I hope you've enjoyed this series. So we're closing this out. Be looking forward. I may be doing a podcast reading on the Didache to kind of go over that as well, because I think it's a really good topic to kind of follow this, since it's some stuff to the Gentiles. That it was basically information. Although they don't know who wrote the letter, but it's supposedly stuff that the apostle said. And as we will see, even though it wasn't included in most Bibles, as we'll see, it's got a lot of good information that I think really portrays and fits into this series. Okay, although it won't be part of the series, but it'll be separate. But all right, well, be blessed. Talk to you later.